lake burst and floods in 2013. A large part of the town wiped out. Over 5,000 dead. An avalanche in 2021 sweeping away scores of people.
All these towns which are situated along the river, any river, are in danger today in the Himalaya.
And earlier this year, one of India's most important pilgrim towns collapsed. Joshimath, high up in the Himalayas, is sinking.
Situation is very serious. ये बात सही है कि जो स्थिति है उसकी गंभीरता है, गंभीर है. जोशीमठ को बचाए जाने की ज़रूरत है.
कभी-कभी हमें ऐसा लगा कि मतलब हम खुद ही अपने आत्महत्या कर लें. इतनी ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम आ रही.
Why are the mountains moving? And what will this mean for the millions living along the world's highest mountain range?
We have to protect the Himalayas for the future of the humanity.
Wreathed by the majestic snow-covered peaks of the Himalayas lies the ancient holy town of Joshimath. Tracing its roots back to the 8th century, Joshimath is nestled in the Indian state of Uttarakhand. It beckons nature lovers and spiritual seekers alike. But beneath the town's peaceful facade is a deepening crisis, an existential threat that forced resident Anjali Rawat out of her home one January night.
हमें पता नहीं था कि मतलब न्यू ईयर में हम अपना घर छोड़ देंगे. हम सो ही रहे थे तो जो हमारे पीछे होटल था उनको मतलब वो भी कब से अंदर ही अंदर होटल टूटा था. होटल ही वालों ने किसी ने बताया कि उनके खिड़की जो शीशे थे ना वो खुद टूटने लग गए थे और उन्होंने मोहल्ले में किसी को फ़ोन किया कि तुम जल्दी से मतलब घर से निकल जाओ, होटल टूट रहा है, टूटने लग गया.
Anjali had little time to react. She ran out of her home with her husband AJ and their 10-year-old son Shivansh.
किसी ने आवाज़ लगाई कि भागो भागो ये होटल टूट गया. तो हम बाहर आए तब तक मतलब बहुत भीड़ हो रखी थी. सब लोग मतलब भाग रहे थे, रोड में आए ऊपर. 3 तारीख हम सुबह 6-6:30 बजे के टाइम पे हम घर गए. ठीक ही था, मतलब जैसे हमारे घर पहले से था वैसे ही था. क्रैक्स थोड़ा ज़्यादा आ गई थी उस दिन रात को, क्योंकि कभी कभी तो रात को आवाज़ें आती थी जैसे ना भूकंप के जैसे झटके की, मतलब ऐसा होता था हमारे घर में. पर हमें इतना वो नहीं था कि हमारा घर टूटेगा या नीचे से टूट रहा है कह के.
What struck Joshimath was not an earthquake nor an avalanche. Instead, the very foundations of the town were sinking. Like thousands of other Joshimath residents, Anjali found cracks forming in her home several months ago. And on that fateful January night, several would collapse.
10 बजे तक हमारा जो है बरामदा था आगे वो पूरा ही टूट गया था. पुलिस प्रशासन वहाँ पे गई, उन्होंने बोला कि तुम बाहर आ जाओ. फिर आए, फिर हमने कुछ भी नहीं किया. ये था कि हम इतना सामान लेके कहाँ जाएंगे, फिर बच्चों के साथ कहाँ जाएंगे. फिर वो बरामदा हमारा जो टूटा तो हम बाहर भी नहीं आ पा रहे थे और जो बाहर थे वो अंदर भी नहीं आ पा रहे थे.
With their home uninhabitable, Anjali's family moved to a temporary shelter provided by local municipal authorities. But her nightmare wasn't over.
हमारी दुकान थी मार्केट में और ये था सीज़न में जो बद्रीनाथ का मतलब यात्रा चलती थी उससे अच्छी चलती थी हमारी दुकान. फिर 31st के लिए जो टूरिस्ट आते थे उससे भी अच्छा ही था, मतलब हमारा घर अच्छे से चल जाता था उससे. जो भी खर्चा मतलब फ़ीस वगैरह जो भी थी बच्चों की, अपना रहना खाना जो भी था अच्छे से निकल जाता था हमारा. तो वही अभी तो वो भी दुकान बंद हो गई हमारे. जब कह रहे थे कि जोशीमठ वाले भी सारे इधर उधर हो गए थे कि सब ने ये कहा कि घर टूट रहे हैं और ज़मीनें धंस रही हैं और आधे से ज़्यादा जो रोड भी थी वो भी धंसने लग गई थी. तो सब ने यही बोला कि जो मतलब बीच में ये भी कहा था कि जो सीज़न चलेगा यात्रा चलेगी उसको भी रोकेंगे कह के. तो हमारा तो उसी पे जो टूरिस्ट आ रहे थे उसी पे हमारा घर चलता था. दुकान चलती थी, बंद कर दिया था नीचे से। उन्होंने बोला कि यात्री जो भी है वो टूरिस्ट आने नहीं देंगे।
Joshimath is one of India's most important spiritual towns. It is where pilgrims stay, en route to the nearby Badrinath temple. Badrinath temple is one of the Shardam, 4 shrines that Hindus believe they must visit to attain salvation. But in 1976, Joshimath received an early warning of disaster in the form of a land survey known as the Mishra Report.
Everybody was ignorant about Joshimath. There was a report 45 years before by some commissioner of that place that this whole Joshimath is sitting on a fire. Nobody really looked into this, not even scientists at that particular time.
They call it sinking or subsidence, and probably this word was used for the first time in the Mishra Committee report of 1976. And Mishra Committee has done a very in-depth study of Joshimath, and they have pointed out several things which are wrong with that slope.
But the warning in the Mishra report went unheeded. In the meantime, Joshimath, sitting at almost 1,900 meters above sea level, continued to expand. It now spreads over 2.5 square kilometers, precariously placed along the mountain slope. What's more, is built on layers of landslide debris and glacial moraine, the sediment deposited by melting glaciers.
When the water is wiped out of this glacial moraine, that becomes like a cement. That's a very, very hard rock then. People think that that's very hard rock, although it is not. When such kind of moraine again mixes with water, it could be subsurface water, that again loosens. This becomes the original glacial moraine on which you cannot even walk.
But even if Joshimath was built on poor foundations, why has it stood for centuries, only to crumble in the last few decades? Scientists think it is a confluence of unfettered urbanization, the unstable ground, and the increased presence of water. And the latter can be partly attributed to climate change.
This is a simple phenomena. Glacier receive the snow in the winter and release the water in the summer. जो भी ग्लोबल वार्मिंग का जो इम्पैक्ट हम हिमालय में देखते हैं, जो हम कहते हैं कि आपको समर पीरियड एक्सटेंड कर रहा है, विंटर सिंक कर रहा है, स्नोफॉल कम हो रहा है, या ग्लेशियर मेल्ट ज़्यादा हो रहा है. क्लाइमेट चेंज अगर टेम्परेचर राइज हो रहा है, फ्रोजन वाटर है, दैट इज गोइंग टू मेल्ट वेरी फास्ट.
So the water is percolating deeper down through cracks, through fissures, through the porosity, within the debris. Action of swelling is there. Then again, when this rainfall is over, then you have harsh sun. We have a sunshine, very harsh sun in the Himalayan region in these days. Okay, temperature is relatively gone up. So in that case, the evaporation is very, very high. And because of this pinching and swelling action, so you are widening those pre-existing cracks or the pore spaces in that rocks.
It was found that consumption water was just let out. There are no proper lined nalas. So this was in the 2006 report as well, that there are no planned drainage systems. The drains were not lined.
Without proper drainage to manage the flow of water, it seeps into the ground or swells the rivers and streams, also called nulas. These erode the already unstable soil around Joshimath.
You have a stream called Alaknanda River, which is cutting the downmost part. So the entire township is along this slope from the top to bottom.
What's more, the Himalayan range sits atop 3 fault lines, and signs of the earth moving are now everywhere.
Cracks on the ground means that the ground itself is sleeping. Over that you have got a lot of streams coming down, and these about 9 or 11 nalas are coming down the slope of Joshimath. Construction has happened which has blocked the nalas. It is just saturating the soil underground, which is making the soil very, very unstable.
In Joshimath, over 800 buildings developed cracks. After the January collapse, the hotel behind Anjali's house was demolished. Scores of houses deemed unsafe are marked with red crosses. Over 300 families were forced to leave their homes. It is June, and 42-year-old post office worker Rekha Devi is back in her cracked home since she cannot afford to rent a flat. But all her tenants are gone, making it virtually impossible for her to service her loan.
हमने जो मकान बनाया था उसमें किराएदार रखे थे और हमने अपने लोन चुकाने के लिए उसमें किराएदार रखे और आज दरार पड़ने के कारण सारे घर खाली हो गए। घर किराएदार मकान खाली करके ये घर चले गए, तो आज ये हम लोन कहाँ से वापस करेंगे। ज़्यादा समस्या हमें ये बनी हुई है। बिल्कुल अभी तो जोशीमठ में सभी लोगों का अस्तित्व पे बिल्कुल ख़राब हो चुका है। लोग होटल में जा रहे हैं, फिर होटल में कब तक रहेंगे पता नहीं। लोग कहाँ मतलब सब ये सोच रहे हैं कि उसके बाद हम कहाँ जाएंगे।
Meanwhile, Anjali has been served an eviction notice from her temporary shelter. She has nowhere to go.
जनवरी जब 3 तारीख को हम यहाँ पे आए, उस दिन से हम यहीं हैं। नगर पालिका जो है जोशीमठ नगर पालिका, हम अभी 3 जनवरी से हम अभी तक यहीं पे हैं। तो उन्होंने हमको 4 महीने या 6 महीने का टाइम दिया था कि तुम यहाँ पे रह लो। अभी तुम्हारी इमरजेंसी भी व्यवस्था कर रखी है रहने के लिए, तो अभी हम यहीं पे। अब ये कह रहे, उन्होंने कहा कि को तुम यहाँ से चले जाना, खाली कर दो यहाँ पे। फिर अभी हमारा ये है कि पैसा वगैरह जो भी है हमारी दुकान से जो चलता था, अभी हम दुकान भी नहीं है हमारी और पैसे की बहुत ज़्यादा दिक्कत आ रही।
The authorities are working to provide relief to these desperate townsfolk. The relief efforts are under the purview of the Disaster Management Committee based in Eroding, Uttarakhand's capital.
On relief front, the administration, the government has done whatever was required. We have taken care of livelihood, we have taken care of their accommodation problem, and now we have also issued a kind of policy for their rehabilitation. We have a plan, we have given options. If somebody wants to get money in lieu of the house damaged because of cracks and all, we are giving them money. And those who opt for house or house for house, we will provide them houses. So we have given options to the residents of Joshimath. Whatever they decide, we'll try to provide them.
Some Joshimath residents are not reassured. They have come out on the streets, demanding relief and quick action. But the collapse of Joshimath could just be the beginning. What plagues the holy town, the fragile Himalayan ecology, climate change, and frenetic construction, is happening elsewhere. At an altitude of over 1,900 meters above sea level lies the Indian town of Nainital. It is nestled in a valley in the Kumaon Himalayas, the name for the central western region of the mountain range. The town is built around the picturesque Nainital lake, from which a stream called the Balia Nala flows. Like Joshimath, increased water flows have left Nainital in a precarious state.
Balia Nala is having very high gradient. This is escarpment basically. So along the gravity, everything is sliding down, and it is triggering by the effect of excessive rainwater. So water is acting as a lubricating material if it is percolating through the cracks and fissures, and you are putting a load along a slope, So because of that load, the cracks will widen.
That part of Nainital is loose rock, not very hard. It's calcareous loose rock. And when water goes inside, it kind of melts, becomes more loose, and then goes down.
Disaster struck Nainital in September 2014. Excessive rainfall caused a landslide on the right side of Balya Nala. Municipal Supervisor Rajesh Kshatriya and his family were forced to abandon their home and moved to a safer spot. But the danger persists.
नीचे से जब लैंडस्लाइड होता रहा तो हम लोगों को ऊपर शिफ्ट कर दिया गया, तो हम यहाँ ऊपर आकर के शिफ्ट हो गए। लेकिन यहाँ भी दरारें आ रही हैं सर, हम यहाँ भी हम सुरक्षित नहीं हैं। ये भी अगर कभी भयंकर भूकंप आया या ज़मीन हिली तो ये जगह भी खतरे में है जहाँ पर हम बैठे हैं अभी वर्तमान में, इसका भी कोई भरोसा नहीं है। 72 से सर बल्या नाला जो है लैंडस्लाइड होता चला आ रहा है और इस ओर किसी का ध्यान नहीं है।
And action is urgently needed. Since 1867, the Nainital region has experienced several landslides. Even in recent decades, there were landslides in 1998, 2014, and 2022. And each year, when the rainy season comes, Rajesh and his family worry when they will have to shift again.
बरसात के समय में कभी 5 घंटे लगातार बारिश हो जाती है, कभी 2 दिन बारिश लगातार हो जाती है, कभी 36 घंटे बारिश हो जाती है। तो लगातार बारिश में यहाँ से जो पानी जाता है तो बल्या नाले की जड़ में जाकर के टकराता है। वो मिट्टी का कटाव होते रहता है, तो उससे लैंडस्लाइड होने का खतरा बना हुआ है। जो पिछली बार लैंडस्लाइड हुआ था तो उसमें 50 परिवारों को इन्होंने स्कूल में शिफ्ट किया था सर, कि रात को स्कूल में सो जाते थे वो।
One of the families is of Shanti Devi. Last October, Shanti woke up in the middle of the night when she felt the earth move.
अक्टूबर के महीने में 2 दिन की जब बारिश हुई थी तो उस टाइम पे क्या कहते हैं वहाँ पर फिर क्या कहते हैं गिरने लग गया सारा वो नीचे को पहाड़ी। उसके बाद हम तो सोए थे, हमें पता नहीं था, देवर जगाने आए कि उठो उठो करके। हमने सोचा कोई बीमार है या कुछ है हो गया है करके, तो बाहर निकले तो कहने लगे नीचे को सब गिर रहा है, भागो भागो करके। तब जाके हम 11 बजे रात ऊपर को भागे। फिर वहाँ से भी कहीं स्कूल में नहीं हो पाया तो फिर दोबारा घर गए, रात भर बैठे रहे वैसे ही। फिर दूसरे दिन को फिर स्कूल में दिया गया हमको डीएम साहब ने।
45-year-old Shanti and her family remained in the school shelter. Now, she doesn't know what the future holds.
हमें ये उम्मीद है कि सरकार या डीएम साहब हमारे लिए कुछ करेंगे। क्या कहते हैं वो कहीं पर हमारे लिए घर बना के हमको दे देंगे अगर हमारा घर क्षतिग्रस्त होता है तो। मजदूरी करते हैं मेरे हस्बैंड, तो बरसात में काम नहीं हो पाता 4 महीने, किराया भी ज़्यादा है, इसलिए हम किराए पे भी नहीं जा पा रहे हैं।
The January collapse of Joshimath has put the spotlight on other Himalayan towns that are at risk. Towns like Gaucha, Darasu, and of course, Nainital. Yet many of these settlements are expanding. In Joshimath, the population grew from around 48,000 in 2011 to over 63,000 in 2023. And in Nainital, the town that began the 20th century with a few thousand inhabitants is grown to around 48,000 now. Buildings here now number around 7,000, including over 150 hotels and resorts.
It's a tourist town. It's a business town, so people are going, staying there. There are hotels, that all that water is going into the soil. Where is that water going? How many sewer treatment plants are connected? All these things are very, very important now. It is not about only Joshimath, it's also about all mountain towns. They need to be appropriately planned.
Instead, buildings are mushrooming on unstable foundations, often with little central planning.
If you have a very pulverized material, you have a flat ground, flat topography. So they have found this area very suitable for construction of the house, a hotel and all. So haphazardly they have constructed all these things. Such type of situation is precarious because the entire system is cut by one fault. And the 500-meter zone, the Nainital lake is located on fault. All the banks of these lakes, all the flanks of these lakes, you see the landslides, they are the loose material. The boulders, they are rolling down. But in due course of time, maybe since past 3-4 decades or so, slowly and slowly, Balia Nala is going down and down. And now you see most of the houses, they were vacated. Ground is already cracked and very wide, huge cracks are there. And at the same time, you see the excessive rainfall, hailstorm, snowfall in Nainital. So all these loose material, they will mix with water. It is coming down, rolling down.
The area on the other side of Balia Nala is sliding at a rate of 60 centimeter to 1 meter per year. And it's completely slowly sliding. We are not seeing it today. A layman cannot see it today. There is always landslides. And that is happening probably for the last 50 years. One landslide, small landslide this year, double of it next year, triple of it third year, and so on and so forth. In the last 50 years, we have lost all the foundation of Nainital.
If people are constructing close to the rivers, close to the streams, they are constructing without considering the carrying capacity of a particular terrain. There is no consideration where the drainage will go, where the water will go. There is no proper drainage. That is one of the main reason, because if in the hills, if you don't have proper drainage, your road could collapse, your township, your slope could collapse, and ultimately the township could collapse. So that is ultimately become the key factor.
After the January collapse of Joshimath, the authorities are working to shore up the integrity of these mountain towns, starting by addressing the haphazard construction.
We'll prepare a specific construction and development guidelines for all hilly towns. And we are going ahead with that. That will be a kind of scientific basis of coming out, development plans and carrying capacity, bearing capacity, everything. We have prepared a detailed DPR, detailed project report for Balia Nala, worth rupees around 200 crores. And we are hoping we would be able to stabilize Balia Nala.
But mountain geology is complex. It can be difficult to pinpoint the exact cause of earth movements. Some scientists suspect the very act of construction is shaking the roots of the mountains. Even now, roads are being built in the Himalayas with an eye cast across the border. An eye towards China. Badrinath Temple, high up in the Himalayas. It is one of the Chardams, or 4 shrines. For centuries, Hindu pilgrims visited Badrinath along the world's highest mountain range. In 2019, before COVID, it is thought that 12 million people made the treacherous journey. To accommodate the influx of people, the Indian government built roads and a rail network deep into the mountains, with some roads spanning 10 meters. But some experts think the road widening is done without regard to the fragile ecosystem.
The way of construction, it should be mass balancing cut and fill. Means You have to overall maintain, overall balance the mass of the slope. If you cut some portion, you have to fill it from the downside so that overall mass of the slope is balanced. Nobody is following these guidelines. What is the casual way of building road? Just cut the hills because now we have big machines, excavator. But as a result, we have very massive hill cutting, and that massive hill cutting and tree felling is resulting in a mass slope failures and landslide.
Landslides have become a regular phenomenon on the perilous mountain roads. With roads blocked by debris, long lines of vehicles snake through the mountain pass during the busy pilgrim season. To halt the road building spree, environmentalists filed a public interest litigation in the Supreme Court, requesting a detailed environmental impact assessment. Environmental activist Dr. Herman Diyani is working for the protection of the Himalayan Ganga Basin for more than a decade.
We recommended that instead of 10-meter tarred road, 5.5-meter tarred road is more than enough for this Himalayan terrain, and it would be a sustainable approach for the Himalayas, and it is more than enough to fulfill the need of the local people and fulfill the need of the tourism. So recommendations of ours was accepted by the Honorable Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court ordered that yes, this road width should be implemented prospectively as well as retrospectively.
The courts temporarily suspended construction, but the government argues that the roads are vital for national security. Wider roads allow military vehicles to access India's volatile northern border, a border it shares with China. After several rounds of arguments, the court accepted the government's point of view.
Finally, the Supreme Court held that okay, we don't second guess the army needs, but with that, Supreme Court gave its approval with certain conditions. So it's a conditional approval which says that you also fulfill the other recommendations made by the high-powered committee in view of the environmental protection, and then keeping that those recommendations in mind, you can make this 10-meter tarred road.
In recent years, tensions have been brewing along the India-China border. June 2020 saw the first deadly clash between the two countries along the border in 4 decades. There have been several minor skirmishes since. Retired Lieutenant General Gambhir Singh Negi had commanded an infantry division on the Himalayan border earlier.
Let me put it this way, that we have some forces already on that axis. Okay. Should the threat develop from the Chinese side, then we need to build up on that base. That's one of the basic things of the strategic planning, that you have some forces holding the ground, and when the threat develops, you build up the required ammunition, manpower, weapons to counter the possible threat that is developing. Insofar as Joshimath is concerned, the problem is going to be if the roads are not there, if the infrastructures are not there, so when the threat develops, the forces that are going to build up, they will take longer time.
The Defense Ministry moved that application in particular, stating that it has its strategic importance. And from security point of view, if something happens, we have to have these kinds of wide roads to take our artillery and weapons and even the army, etc., the personnel to those areas. This is one of the aspects which the Supreme Court took in mind while passing that order of December 2021. And again, so the balance on the factors which were there in 2019 were tilting in favor of maintaining the ecology had tilted on the other side.
In other parts, the constant cacophony of construction disturbs the mountain's tranquility. Mega infrastructure projects like hydroelectric power stations and mountain tunnels, some built by the National Thermal Power Corporation or NTPC, are causing alarm. There's concern that all the blasting and boring will weaken the integrity of the rock strata.
The rampant construction, the haphazard construction, either it is construction of the houses, buildings, hotel, resorts, townships, cities, municipalities, or roads, or the hydro projects, and all other activities, all construction. There has never been a proper sustainable approach with due scientific studies, impact studies, and the mitigation measures.
2005-06 से जब से ये NTPC की परियोजना बनने लगी, तपोवन विष्णु घाट परियोजना, जिसकी सुरंग जो है जोशीमठ के ठीक नीचे से जा रही है, हमारी एप्रीहेंशंस पहले से थी कि ये परियोजना बनेगी तो ऐसा ऐसा होगा, और वो आशंका हमारी पहले भी सही साबित हुई जब इनकी परियोजना की सुरंग में जो है इनकी TBM मशीन फंस गई। हमारा पानी जल स्रोत जो है वहाँ जाने लगा, उसका पानी रिसाव होने लगा, और लगातार जो जहाँ जहाँ परियोजना का काम चल रहा है वहाँ लोगों के गाँवों के नीचे घर के आसपास दरारें आने लगी।
But some scientists, like Dr. Swapna Mita at Wadia Institute, say the impact is exaggerated. She does not think the NTPC tunnel has caused any damage since it is deep down in the Himalayas and far away from the town. And there were signs of instability long before tunneling began.
So in 2006, when I had visited Joshimath, what had happened was that I saw a lot of devastation this side. This is the Eti Nala, and this Nala was like notorious during that time. It was so bad, and there was no bridge here, and there was a small village here. And after my report, this village was evacuated. In fact, they had to be taken off, and this whole land was just coming down. And so there were a lot of cracks in this area. I remember I went into the army area. It is in my report as well that the army area was experiencing a lot of cracks. And Mishra Committee, 1976, they have reported the unstable situation of Joshimath. So how can we say that the tunnel is responsible? Now, if supposing somebody says that there is blasting happening in the tunnel, or why the TBM is getting stuck, we have to understand that the tunnel is like 1,000 meters at depth. So it is going from Helang on the bottom and going up to Tapovan. And I think the Joshimath problem is a superficial problem. It is not linked with something happening at such depth.
When Joshimath collapsed earlier this year, construction of the Helang-Marwari bypass road was halted. But after a 5-month hiatus, work has resumed.
Physical connectivity is very important if you consider both from the religious point of view, the tourism point of view, and a strategic point of view. You know, we have establishment of army and paramilitary, and we have to provide them connectivity. Because they have to go to far-flung areas and border areas. So we cannot ignore physical connectivity. Now people are blaming this Helang bypass. We have got a proper investigation done by IIT Roorkee, and came out with their recommendations. And in their recommendations, they said because Helang bypass is based on solid rock, it is not going to affect Joshimath area and will not aggravate the problem.
Development work is going on at a rapid pace. More people are traveling and the climate's changing. Can the Himalayan towns and the fragile ecosystem be protected? Climate change has hit India hard. In the decade between 2012 and 2021, 11,000 have died of heat stroke, as the country experienced unprecedented heat waves. When the rain comes, it doesn't bring much relief. Rainfall is erratic and scanty for the most part, and intense over just a few days. And in the highlands, climate change is even more pronounced.
The IPCC, they said that in last 30 years, the temperature of Earth has gone above 1.2 degree. And in the end of this decade, we are just going to touch 1.5 degree. And then the same time, there is this impact is higher in the Himalayas. It's a most fragile and most sensitive to the impacts of climate change, the Himalayas. That's why in this era of climate change, where there is a sword hanging on the humanity,
according to the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, at 1.5 degrees Celsius global temperature rise, warming could be at least 0.3 degrees Celsius higher in the Hindu Kush Himalayas and at least 0.7 degrees Celsius higher in the northwest Himalayas and Karakoram. Scientists say Himalayan glaciers have retreated rapidly in recent decades, causing many lakes to form and expand. This causes glacial lake outburst floods, or GLOFs. In 2013, in Kedarnath, heavy rainfall over a few days and rapid melting of snow and ice led to a lake burst and river flooding, killing over 5,000 people.
It is a significant role of climate. बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पैक्ट पड़ रहा है आपका जो आपदा होते हैं जैसे फ्लडिंग वो इंक्रीज हो रहे हैं डे बाय डे. अगर हम एग्जांपल उत्तराखंड का लेके आते हैं सपोज तो 13 में जो पहला बड़ा डिजास्टर जो आया था केदारनाथ में, उसके बाद जो है 18 में जो है सेम टाइप का लेक और बस जो है इवन दिस स्मॉल लेक गंगोत्री ग्लेशियर में हुआ था.
All these towns which are situated along the river, any river, are in danger today in the Himalaya. 2013 tragedy, Kedarnath tragedy, whole town which were situated along the river were washed away. And tomorrow also it is going to happen. If there is more precipitation, then everything would be washed away, whatever is situated along the rivers. Yeah. You just need one cloud burst, that's all.
Ajendra Ajay is in charge of managing Badrinath and Kedarnath temples, the holy sites that pilgrims come to visit. He has seen the havoc that changing weather patterns played on devotees.
क्लाइमेट चेंज जो है वो ग्लोबली प्रॉब्लम है, तो स्वाभाविक रूप से सभी क्षेत्र उससे प्रभावित हो रहे हैं. और आप देख सकते हैं कि इस वर्ष जब विंटर सीजन था तब यहाँ पर बारिश नाम मात्र के लिए हुई थी, बर्फबारी नहीं हुई. और अभी ये मई फर्स्ट वीक शुरू हो चुका है और अभी बारिश हो रही है लगातार बहुत तेज़ी के साथ में. और ख़ास करके जो हमारे धाम है यहाँ पर बहुत भारी संख्या में बर्फबारी हो रही है, निरंतर बर्फबारी हो रही है. तो स्वाभाविक रूप से जो क्लाइमेट चेंज हो रहा है उसका ये प्रभाव है. और समय समय पर आपने ये भी खबरें सुनी होंगी कि ग्लेशियर टूट रहे हैं. जब हम छोटे थे हम सुनते थे कि कभी बादल फटते थे तो इक्का दुक्का इस तरीके की घटनाएं होती थी, लेकिन धीरे धीरे ये जो बादल फटने की घटनाएं हैं, क्लाउड बर्स्ट, तो बहुत ज़्यादा हो रहे हैं. जगह जगह लैंडस्लाइड हो रहा है.
Yet, Himalayan towns are rapidly growing as more tourists and pilgrims throng the mountain abodes. During last year's pilgrim season, a record number of 4 million pilgrims visited the Shardam shrines. One of them was 32-year-old Dharmendra Negi, a regular visitor to the mountain temples. A devout Hindu, Dharmendra made the trip again to the Badrinath temple this year from Joshimath.
क्योंकि यहाँ पे लोकल हूँ, जोशीमठ का रहने वाला हूँ, तो बद्रीनाथ में साल में पर ईयर 3 से 4 बार यात्रा करता हूँ। जोशीमठ जो भूधसाव जोशीमठ में हुआ है उससे देश विदेश के यात्रियों पे, तीर्थ यात्रियों पे, उन लोगों के लिए तो ये क्राइसिस बहुत बड़ा दंश है और लोग इससे जो है कि यात्रा पे बहुत अधिक प्रभाव पड़ा है। और हम तो भगवान से प्रार्थना करते हैं कि ये दरारें आना बंद हो जाएं और ये अगर जारी रहता है क्योंकि लोग इससे प्रभावित होंगे और यहाँ पे आना इस तरह से लोगों को रुकेंगे लोग यहाँ पे आने से।
For Joshimath resident Anjali Rawat, it has been more than 6 months since her family fled from their home. In that time, they have taken refuge at a rented house in another town called Gopashwar, about 60 kilometers from Joshimath. With little funds to build a new house, Anjali could only bear witness to her home crumbling in front of her eyes.
ये सोच रहे कि कुछ नया काम करेंगे या दोबारा दुकानें कहीं देखेंगे सीजन के लिए बद्रीनाथ में या यहीं जोशीमठ मार्केट में, तो रैंक इतना ज़्यादा है कि हम उसको दे ही नहीं पा रहे हैं। कोई कह रहा है कि मतलब जैसे पगड़ी दो 3 लाख रुपए 2 लाख रुपए पगड़ी दो, तो इतना हम दे नहीं सकते। और जो मंथली किराया है वो है 20,000 रुपये, तो 20,000 हम दे नहीं पाएंगे इतना। वहाँ पे एडमिशन फ़ीस पड़ती है सबसे पहले, फिर बुक्स वगैरह जो भी है वो लानी पड़ती। कभी कभी हमें ऐसा लग रहा कि मतलब हम खुद ही अपने आत्महत्या कर लें। आज हमें पता चल रहा कि जो लोग सड़कों पे अपने दिन काटते हैं वही कंडीशन हमारी भी हो रही। इतनी ज़्यादा बुरी कंडीशन हमारी हो गई है।
With Joshimath a harbinger of what could await other Himalayan towns, 270 kilometers away in Nainital, Municipal Supervisor Rajesh Kshatriya is worried about its future.
अगर सरकार ने इस ओर जल्दी ध्यान नहीं दिया तो बलियाना चला जाएगा और नैनीताल जो है ख़त्म होने के कगार में है। और यहाँ कभी भी रात को किसी भी जान माल का खतरा भी हो सकता है। जैसे लैंडस्लाइड वहाँ हुआ वैसे यहाँ भी हो सकता है, क्योंकि दिन पर दिन कंस्ट्रक्शन नैनीताल में ज़्यादा होता चला जा रहा है। इस साइड में वजन धरती के ऊपर बहुत ज़्यादा रख रहे हैं लोग, क्योंकि प्रशासन ने मकान बनाने पर रोक लगा रखी है, लेकिन लोग नहीं मान रहे।
But if there's any silver lining to the sinking of Joshimath, it is the wide attention the episode received. This has spurred the authorities and scientists to urgent action.
Unless we have investigation reports, it's very difficult to issue spatial guidelines for Joshimath. Now we are doing these investigations, geophysical, geotechnical, spring mapping. Based on reports of these organizations, we will prepare a specific construction guidelines. Basically, these are hills. As you know, Himalaya is a new mountain, still stabilizing. It hasn't stabilized to the extent it should be. In the process of stabilization, these things happen. And as a kind of resident of those areas, we have to take proper precautions. Even Balia Nala is a chronic problem. It started in 1840. So it's a 200-year problem, not a new problem. But yes, the government of Uttarakhand is taking all the steps required to stabilize hilly areas. We are very hopeful whatever is happening in hilly areas, we'll try to mitigate those problems.
We need development in the Himalaya, construction of houses, hotels, roads, tunnels, everything we need in Himalaya. Okay, but knowing the fact that the ecosystem is fragile, we need, technological support and the technical knowledge and the smart technology which is available throughout the globe. So, by doing all development in a scientific way, or this area can be saved.
It is thought that humans have lived in the shadow of the Himalayas for more than 5,000 years. Its vast snowy summits, stretching out to touch the skies, have long captured the imagination of their beholders, like the millions of pilgrims who hold these peaks sacred. But the mountains are moving. A confluence of tectonic activity, rampant construction, and climate change is rapidly changing the fragile ecology. For those who call the Himalayan slopes home, it is a race against time to save India's mountain towns.
पर्वतीय क्षेत्रों का और आपदा का चोली दामन का साथ है। लगातार आप इतिहास उठा करके देखेंगे तो दशकों पहले से भी, सदियों से बड़ी बड़ी आपदाएं यहाँ पर आती रही हैं, लेकिन यह है कि हर आपदा के बाद यहाँ के जो जनमानस है उसने जीवटता के साथ, अपनी जो उनकी कर्मठता है उसके साथ वो खड़े हुए हैं और उन्होंने आपदाओं पर पार पाया।
Uttarakhand government is very proactive. They want the scientific community to help. They are involving all these organizations to understand what is happening. I'm very positive. If this goes on, this kind of collaborative and cooperation goes on in science, I think we can have a better tomorrow.
We don't have any other choice. We have to protect the Himalayas. And if we don't protect it, there is, in this race, nobody is winning. We all will lose. We all will lose, and we have to understand this, that we are going to lose each and everything. We will lose our civilization, our ethos, our values, everything we will lose with the Himalayas. So we have to protect it, not for ourselves, we have to protect the Himalayas for the future generations of this country, for the humanity, for the future of the humanity.